New Orleans Saints running back Alvin Kamara will face a 3-game suspension to start the season, but let's talk about why the New Orleans Saints are going to be just fine. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much, as always, to all you everydayers out there making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, you can always subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss a daily episode. And if you want to keep the conversation going one-on-one with me, get insider access, early information, exclusive Q&As, exclusive film studies, make sure you check out joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSaints today to join a community that I would love for you to be a part of. As always, I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on your favorite social media, your New Orleans Saints expert, credentialed member of the media, senior writer and reporter for Saints News Network, Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation site covering the New Orleans Saints. And of course, you can also find me every Tuesday on the Locked On NFL podcast and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. A championship team is all about each player being the perfect fit, and eBay Motors believes the same should be the case for your vehicle. So head over to eBay Motors today. Just look for that green check. Stay in the game with eBay's guaranteed fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit available only to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. On today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going to take a look at Cam Jordan's 2-year extension because it's simply rocks. It's an awesome story, and Cam Jordan will finish his career more than likely here as a New Orleans Saint. And he's not the only one. Potentially, Alvin Kamara also wants to finish his career as a New Orleans Saint. I'll tell you a little bit about that. But first, before Alvin Kamara can even think about where his career ends or where his career comes to a close, he's got to be thinking about this year, especially with the news of the suspension, the long-awaited suspension that is tied to the Las Vegas incident from back in February of 2022 or whenever it was, has finally been handed down by the NFL today, just a little while ago. And it's a 3-game suspension. And let me tell you this. That is a huge win for Alvin Kamara and the New Orleans Saints. No matter which way you slice it, dice it, remix it, reiterate it, whatever, it is a huge win for the New Orleans Saints. This whole case went from being a felony battery charge that could have ended up in jail time for Alvin Kamara and ends instead with a misdemeanor breach of peace charge, some charges here and there. Alvin Kamara did have to put a lot up there, had to put a lot up financially, lost some friends, he said today, things like that, lost a little bit of respect for, himself in terms of the way that he handled that whole situation, all of that. But he's looking to grow from it. And now you look at the fact that he's going to miss 3 games, which is half of the initial minimum game suspension that we thought we were going to see when it comes to this suspension. This is massive news for the New Orleans Saints. But before we even get into why the New Orleans Saints won't really have any issues in the run game without Alvin Kamara, or maybe shouldn't throughout those first 3 games, the first thing we have to highlight here is that this is a massive win for both the Saints and for Alvin Kamara. A little bit more so Alvin Kamara because now, look, the legal situation side of it is done. The NFL side of it is done. The civil case here in New Orleans is done. So now he can just put all of it behind him. There's nothing left. There's no residual effect from all of this. So this is great for the Saints and for Alvin Kamara, both on a football and on a personal life level. Now, Alvin Kamara will still miss the first 3 games. He'll miss week 1 going up against the Tennessee Titans here in New Orleans at home. He'll miss the week 2 Monday night football game against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina or in Charlotte. And then we'll miss the week 3 road game against the Green Bay Packers. But when you think about it, Saints aren't in bad shape against those three teams in particular. You've got two first-time starting quarterbacks in the Carolina Panthers with Bryce Young, as well as Jordan Love with the Green Bay Packers. And in week one against the Tennessee Titans, we really don't know who that team is just yet, but we do know that that's a team that's going to be looking to throw the ball, and that might play into the New Orleans Saints' strength because their secondary has been performing extremely well for years and years and years, but particularly also during this during training camp. And so I think that the Saints could be in a good position over the course of the first 3 weeks to still be okay without Alvin Kamara. And it helps that they rebuilt their running back room. You've got Jamal Williams who can, rush and do all of it. You've got who can rush and catch and who can be the bell cow back for you. I think even without Alvin Kamara missing these 3 games, if they both played 17 games this season, I still think Jamal Williams ends with more rushes and more rushing yards just based on what his role is going to be in New Orleans. The next piece of it that you look at is Kendre Miller, the rookie that they drafted at just 20 years old in the 3rd round out of TCU. He's been getting a lot of pass catching opportunities here in New Orleans and making good on them. We've watched him grow as a runner and kind of catch up to that NFL speed. This is a guy that looks like he's been rushing as an NFL running back for a couple of years now, as opposed to it being his first time. So now, or his first year. And so you now have Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller that you can turn to. We have seen rookie running back after rookie running back after rookie running back have major impacts in the NFL year in and year out. And then the next piece of it that you have beyond that is going to be, of course, a look at where, who is the person, the 3rd running back that kind of gets involved. And I think that there's 2 really, really good options for the Saints in terms of maintaining a pass catcher over on the offensive side. Now, don't get it twisted. Jamal Williams is going to be a pass catcher out the backfield. Kendre Miller is going to be a pass catcher out the backfield. If you're playing in the New Orleans Saints offense as a running back, you got to be able to catch passes. Both of them are going to be able to do that. But if you want somebody that's going to be able to replicate that Alvin Kamara playbook as a whole, you've really got 2 options here. I think one is maybe a little bit further along than the other, but you've got 2 of them. It's Eno Benjamin and Kirk Merritt, the converted wide receiver. Those 2 guys stand out to me big time. That's no respect to Ellis Merriweather. It's just that Ellis Merriweather is not a guy that's going to allow you to maintain the Alvin Kamara portions of the playbook. But guys like Eno Benjamin and then a converted wide receiver like Kirk Merritt absolutely can. So those 2 guys, we'll probably start watching a lot more closely in camp, numbers 26 and 33, if you're going to be out there at any point this week. That's going to be a big time battle for who's the guy that, while Alvin Kamara is out for those first 3 games, that gets that sort of rotation of being that get him out in space type running back in the passing game. So I think they're going to have a lot of opportunity here. They're going to be able to produce with Jamal Williams. They're going to be able to produce with Kendre Miller. They're going to be able to produce with either one of those receiving backs as well. I think they're in a really, really good place. And only losing Alvin Kamara for 3 games, the first 3 games of the season where you can game plan for it, as opposed to it being some kind of like an 8-day notice, week 11, 12, and 13 or something like that. Or I guess that would be the bye week, but you know what I mean. That is an entirely different ball game. And this now is an entirely different ball game as well. And so the last piece that I'll mention here before we come back to the other part of the Alvin Kamara conversation is that apparently Alvin Kamara's meeting with Roger Goodell went well. And I think this is a pretty good example of that. Alvin told us today that he felt like, oh, of course, yes. Real quick, I want to thank you, Ricky. Taysom Hill, of course, helps in the run game and contributes in the run game as well. So they should be more than fine in that area of the game. But I think that, Alvin said today in his kind of surprise press conference with us that, he felt that they accomplished everything they needed to accomplish in the meeting with Roger Goodell. Maybe this was that part, right? Maybe it was a 4 or 6 game suspension before. Now it's a 3 game suspension, that kind of stuff. So he'll be eligible to return to the roster after the week 3 game against the Green Bay Packers, but he'll continue to participate in practice throughout training camp. He'll continue to participate in practice throughout the preseason as well. So he could get into some of those preseason games, although I don't think you have to really worry about that too much. Okay, coming up next, we're going to take a look at the other side of the Alvin Kamara story and get you some news and notes from today's training camp. But I want to start off with Alvin Kamara, who made it very, very apparent that he wants to remain a New Orleans Saint for the rest of his career. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, y'all. I'm so excited to be able to tell you all about today's episode being brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is a fantastic way to get in to all of that fantasy action that you might be looking for, especially with it being August. It's officially the start of fantasy football drafting month. And if you're like me, you're pretty busy all the time and might not remember to set your lineup. So that's why I want to tell you about Underdog's Best Ball Mania tournament. It's the largest fantasy football contest of all time, and it's back and even bigger than ever with $15 million up to grabs, including $3 million going to the winner. Best ball is an awesome format. You draft a team just like you would any standard fantasy football draft, but if somebody in your bench outscores a starter, that ends up becoming your high scorer and factoring into your week's total. And then by the end of the season, whoever's got the most points wins. It's a fantastic format, set it and forget it type of thing for your roster. So if you want to go and check them out today, visit underdogfantasy.com or find them on your app store and sign up with the promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code LOCKEDON. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Appreciate all the everydayers being here, whether it's live or later, for another episode here on the show. Big thank you, making us your first listen of the day every day. If you're watching on video, sorry for the blank background today. Just moved into a new house. So we're going to build this up. It's going to be a whole studio and everything like that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So expect that to be coming as we go along. So we covered sort of the biggest story around Alvin Kamara, which is the story around his suspension. Next thing that I want to look at is kind of the brighter side of Alvin Kamara that we got to experience today. It was great to be able to talk to him again. It had been something like 18 months or something like that since we had last spoken to him. So it was really great to really be able to hear from him, or really spoke to him. And so it's been awesome. It was a great opportunity to get to talk to him and kind of see how everything was going with him. And one of the things that I asked him about was, look, we watched Cam Jordan get a 2-year extension this morning. He now gets the opportunity to finish his contract. And by the way, I told you yesterday it was going to be big news today, didn't I? See, that's why you pay attention to the show. It was one of those deals where it was like, hey, you've got Cam Jordan getting into this new situation where the idea of what it is that he wanted to do and finish his career as a New Orleans Saint now becomes really, really real, right? He's got 1 year left on his current deal. He gets that 2-year extension. We'll break it down here in just a moment. But now he's got a real opportunity after year 15 to retire as a New Orleans Saint. That was a big goal of Cam Jordan's. And so instead of me asking him just like, hey, how do you feel about Cam? And really, even before he even got the opportunity, he said, I don't want to talk about Cam. I want to talk about me. I want a lifetime contract. I want to be here forever. I need y'all to put pressure on Mickey Loomis to get it done, just like y'all did around Cam Jordan. And so I asked him straight up, like, no, but that's what I'm trying to ask. Like, is that so Cam now gets the opportunity to finish his career here in New Orleans? Are you interested in the same thing? And he was like, yeah, of course I'm interested. And so it was really, really clear. And look, Alvin has said this on social media before. He's kind of co-signed Cam Jordan before too, around the same sentiment of wanting to finish their careers with the fleur-de-lis and in the black and gold. And so, as you kind of come out of this whole fog of the suspension and will they, won't they, and for how many games might they, and all these other things, you don't have to worry about any of that anymore. Like, Alvin Kamara ain't going to jail. He's suspended for 3 games. The situation's over. And so the next piece for him is, what does he want to do now with the rest of his career, and how does he make good on that? And so as he comes back, 3 games more rested than anybody else in the NFL, basically, or anybody else. Yes, of course I asked that. Anybody else that is, not also suspended to start the season. He now has an opportunity over the course of 14 games here in 2023 to really set himself up for what that next contract might look like. He's already on a second contract right after his rookie deal that goes through 2025. Can he get another deal and extend it beyond 2025 in 2024, kind of like what we're seeing Cam do or in 2025 even. And so now there's a real opportunity for him to be able to, see that through. And it all starts this year. And look, there's got to be 2 different pieces to it, right? It's what can you do when you're on the field But then it's also, how do you handle yourself when you're off the field? And one of the things that he mentioned about that altercation, that incident that took place in Las Vegas, was that, look, he owned the responsibility of it, saying like, look, I was out until 5 o'clock in the morning. And you know what Tony Dungy said? This is what he says. You know what Tony Dungy said? Nothing good happens after midnight. And if you're a How I Met Your Mother fan, I think that quote is also like 2 a.m. or something. He knows, he gets it. And so I do think that there is a little bit of the, he has to produce on the field in order to earn the contract, another contract after the one that he's currently on, especially looking at the landscape of running backs right now and how those contracts aren't happening. But then there's also the, how do you handle yourself off the field and not do that again? And it seems that he's pretty intent on that. So I think there's a good chance here that, like, if Alvin Kamara has a solid 2023 and a solid 2024, that going into 2025, they might be able to line him up with an extra contract, whether it be for 1 year or maybe 2 more years, just like they did with Cam, for him to potentially finish his career here in New Orleans, which would be huge. And so I think that you look at that as a goal for Alvin Kamara, something that he wants to be able to do. And look, he's 1 touchdown away from owning the all-time all-purpose touchdowns, or not all-purpose, but touchdowns from scrimmage record, right? He and Marcus Colston are tied at 72 right now, and he gets 1 touchdown this year. That record is all his, and it's going to be all his for a while. He will eventually probably break into, the rushing yards records, or at least into the top, a top 3, top 5 there, based upon wherever he is, all those things. And so I do think that is such a huge piece about what he might be able to do here moving forward. And I know I keep saying that. I know it's like, oh yeah, it's a huge piece, it's a big part of what it is, but it's just it to me is such a testament of what the New Orleans Saints organization is, and the players that they've been building, building around, particularly over the course of these past couple of seasons. Alvin Kamara is a great person, and he wants to be able to stay here in New Orleans. And he mentioned earlier, like when it was Rod Walker over at NOLA.com that asked him, how do you feel about what's going on with running backs and contracts around the NFL? Keeping in mind that Alvin Kamara is making $15 million per year. He's up there at number 2, right behind Christian McCaffrey. And he's played, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 is going to be this season. So he's got contracts through 9 years of his deal, if you include 2024, 2025. The average lifespan of a running back in the NFL is 2.57 years. He's going to more than quadruple that by the end of this contract. Could he get to the point to where he gets 5 times that if he does that? So I just think that, like, the way that it's so funny, same thing. The way that he takes care of himself, the way that he utilizes himself in the game, and the way that the Saints offense is going to be more adamant about utilizing him in space, getting him in those one-on-one situations as opposed to running him up the middle constantly, where those real kind of get like beaten and bruised and all those other things. That's going to help him. That's going to help him a ton here in 2023 and beyond, in order to be able to get all that done. So, and he, mentioned the thing about the, how the running backs are being treated around the NFL. The first thing he said was, "I'm very happy that I'm here in New Orleans, and that am in paraphrasing, basically said that, like, that I'm valued here and have love here." And clearly he feels that. All right. So we'll wrap that up on Alvin Kamara, but really cool to just sort of see how this is all panned out, and really cool to kind of have him just outright say, hey, I want to be here for the rest of my career. That doesn't happen very often. Couple of quick little notes from today's practice. It was kind of a down day for the Saints offense. Nothing that you should panic over, but it was just a really good day for the defense. We saw Shy Tuttle bat a pass down. The play action drills were really nice, where Derek Carr was able to link up with Taysom Hill downfield. They were able to link up to Lucas Kroll downfield at a later time, Foster Moreau downfield. So all the work that these guys did, all 3 quarterbacks in the play action sort of game, worked really well. But other than that, I mean, the defense was just smothering, and that's what you want to see. Like this, I said a couple of days ago, the defense dominated. This was a whole other defense dominated day. So I think that's a really, really, it was a really strong showing for the Saints defense. Nothing you need to be concerned about over on the offensive side, but just good to see, because that's exactly what you want to be seeing here, is a little bit more back and forth. Did I say Shy Tuttle? I probably said Shy Tuttle because I was thinking 99. I'm sorry, it wasn't Shy Tuttle who batted the pass. He's in Carolina. He's busy doing stuff with bad teams. I'm just playing. But Colin Saunders, my apologies. Number 99, Colin Saunders, my apologies. All right, so coming up next, let's get to Cam Jordan. He gets a 2-year extension. What's the money look like in terms of what we know so far, and what does it mean for the New Orleans Saints? We're going to take a look at that, and as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Cam Jordan gets a 2-year extension, and it very likely means that he will finish his career as a New Orleans Saint. So what's left on the list for him? And what did we learn from his press conference at 8 a.m. this morning? I appreciate you, as always, all the everydayers out there making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day. Don't forget, I'm your host, Shy Tuttle. I'm kidding. I'll just use Shy Tuttle's name for everything. Shy Tuttle got a 2-year extension today. Shy Tuttle's going to be suspended for 3 games. I'll just call everybody Shy Tuttle. I'm seeing one quick question in the chat that I probably should have mentioned, but Michael Thomas not being present at practice today, he's fine. It was a vet rest day. Cam Jordan also got a vet rest day today, along with Michael Thomas and I believe James Hurst as well. But Cam Jordan got a vet rest day because he signed a whole new contract today. He got a 2-year, $27.5 million deal. This, of course, is going to be built as a team-friendly deal. We don't have the full contract details just yet in terms of what the yearly breakdown is, but that basically gives him through 2025. So he's already got this 2023 season on his previous contract, and then this new 2-year extension gives him 2024 and 2025. So it's going to be interesting to see if they adjusted any of Cam Jordan's cap numbers this year, which might not have happened because he already restructured his deal. So everything was kind of already knocked down. So there's not really a lot of opportunity for you to make up on anything there. But then you look at what the extension is. Is it truly a 2-year extension? Is it a 2-year playing time extension, but with 3 void years to help spread the money out, all that other stuff? Like, that's the funny money stuff that we kind of have to wait to see with the details in terms of what that's going to be. But it's great. This gives Cam Jordan the opportunity to finish his career as a Saint. He had 3 goals coming into, anytime that you talk to him about his time with the New Orleans Saints, he wanted to be able to be the franchise sack leader. He's got that with 115.5. He could go after the unofficial sack record, which Ricky Jackson still holds at 123. Basically, the NFL didn't start counting sacks until 1 year after Ricky Jackson had already played, or maybe a couple years after he'd already played. So he had 8 sacks already before the NFL ever started counting sacks. So 115 is from the moment that the NFL started counting sacks to the end of Ricky Jackson's career. That is the record that Cam Jordan has already broken. But I think Cam wouldn't mind getting up to 123 and a half, 124 before his time is over. And I think there's a good chance that he ends up doing that anyway, so that he can hold not only the unofficial record, or not only the official record, but also the unofficial record on top of all that. The other thing that you're looking for from Cam here is that, the thing that was really cool about his press conference this morning is that this is a day that could have all been about him, right? Entirely about him. He just got this 2-year deal. He's one of the most important players in this franchise's history. He's arguably the face of the franchise, depending upon, how quickly you think Derek Carr became or becomes that guy. What I took away from his press conference was that nothing was about him. He was talking about how he wanted to win a Super Bowl. And that was kind of that third goal, right? He wanted to be able to get that franchise sack record. He wanted to be able to retire a New Orleans Saint, which it looks like he's in line to do. It's kind of set up for him. Year 13 is about to happen, and years 14 and 15 are on the books, right? Like, those aren't going anywhere now. So he's got 2 out of the 3 because the third was winning a Super Bowl. But everything that he's talked about so far has been all about the team. It's been, somebody asked him, is there a certain number of sacks that you're chasing? And he said, how many sacks does it take to win a Super Bowl? Like, that's his mentality of, like, I'm not really worried about the individual stuff anymore. He wants to get Derek Carr. And this was another thing that he said, I want to get Derek Carr back to Vegas to win a Super Bowl. All of that. Like, that is the big thing that he's going to see. I saw Hayden actually just put that up there too. Like that's been an echo of his all throughout this offseason, because the Super Bowl is in Las Vegas this year. The Super Bowl next year is here in New Orleans, so 2024, 2025. How cool would it be for Cam Jordan to be able to play in front of his home audience in a Super Bowl? You know what I mean? So like those are the things that he's focused on now. He's not focused on the individual awards, the individual achievements, everything. He's going to get to year 15 in a league where the average is around like I think he said 2.98 across all positions encountered. I mean, goodness gracious, man. It's such a great opportunity for him. And it's a really good thing for the New Orleans Saints. We said this over and over again, right? Before the season started, that this was the one move that they needed to make before the season began. That getting this contract extension done for the New Orleans Saints needs to be their top priority when it comes to any contract work. Now, they got Zach Woods' contract done first. I imagine that was probably an easier contract to get done, so I'm not mad at that. And they also got Cam Jordan's deal done. And that's right. That was the right thing to do, was to get that done before he took a step out on the field in a regular season game. And look, Cam knew that contract was being negotiated. All of that was there, everything. But you didn't see him skip out on any practices. You didn't see him hold out. You didn't see him not. Like, he's all about the team. The whole thing is about what can he do to help the team. And so in a day that could have been Cam Jordan's, and Cam Jordan's only, and warranted, that would have been warranted for it to have been Cam Jordan's and Cam Jordan's only, he couldn't help but share it with his teammates. He went on to name several players and coaches and staff members that aren't even with the organization anymore, that are with the organization, all of that. I mean, man, just really the right way to, I don't want to say the right way, because that's to imply that there is a wrong way. Again, if Cam would have just made the whole thing about him, that would have been perfectly fine. That would have been perfectly fine. That's not a problem. Like, this is a momentous moment in his career. And instead, he shared his flowers. He shared his flowers with all of his teammates and his wife and his 2 kids and his dad were all sitting right there in front row of the press conference, which was super cool, and all that. I will say that that Cam mentioned that he actually went to his wife with the contract extension and was like, do you have any feedback? Do you feel, you know what I mean? Should we make sure this is all good? And he also went to his oldest son, Tank, and was like, hey, you want to go back to Arizona, or you want to finish up here in New Orleans? And apparently his son basically just said, I'm going to school, Dad, because all of his friends are here. And in the midst of the press conference, you heard Cam Jordan refer to, a canned Gatorade as a cold drink. And you also heard him use the word lanyap. He said it was going to be lanyap. Everything about it was lanyap. And so the guy is just a New Orleanian at this point. And he always refers to New Orleans as home. And now he gets the opportunity to finish up here. So it's awesome. It's just really cool to see. And kind of like the Foster Moreau story, it's just like a no strings attached good story. Great story. And it's not like the Saints have to break the bank to get it done or anything like that. So like, if worse turns to worse at any point here, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And, but you just want Cam Jordan to finish out his career healthy on that new deal and ready to retire as a New Orleans Saint, and hopefully with a ring, because he's gotten really close over and over again, right? What was it? 2013, 2011. No, his rookie year, he almost had 2011. No, what year was he? 2011, 2014, 2011. 2011. Geez, I'm going nuts. And so, he was super close then. They were super close in 2017. They were super close in 2018. And now maybe they can get there again. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, they're going to a Super Bowl this year or anything like that, like as cool as it would be. But man, like if there's a team that has a chance that Cam Jordan has been on in the last handful of years or the last 4 years, 3 years, however you want to look at it, this is the one that gives them the best chance since probably the 2019 season. And so this is great. This is a really, really good opportunity for them to be able to make this all happen. So maybe now you've got, Cam Jordan finishing out his career on as a lifer. Maybe next Alvin Kamara finishes his career as a lifer in New Orleans. And oh, by the way, his dad, Cam Jordan's dad, finished his career as a lifer, as a tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. So this again is just like, now it's like the family lineage, right? Like maybe in, however many years from now, we're talking about, Cam Jordan's son finishing his career as a lifer for the New Orleans Saints, or as a lifer for the Detroit Lions, or something like that. You know what I mean? So really, really cool. And we'll see if there's going to be more lifers from this team. And maybe that's something that we'll look at, right? Like, of players that are currently on rookie contracts right now, who would you like to see as a lifer for the New Orleans Saints to spend 10 plus years in the rest of their career in New Orleans? It's a pretty cool conversation, and we can come back to that conversation early next week. Y'all, we're not going to do a early morning episode tomorrow morning, but we will be live tomorrow evening after practice and before White Linen Nights, of course. So we'll be live tomorrow afternoon, so keep an eye out for that. Probably around this time again tomorrow. We'll go a little bit earlier since it's the weekend, and we'll do the same thing for Sunday before the Monday off, where we'll be back to our Monday morning episodes and things like that. So just without us having a Saturday, with it being Saturday, Sunday, I'm not going to do a morning episode. We'll just do the live episodes throughout those. So we got all that coming up for you as we continue on. Thanks for a fun day today. I just think it was cool to be able to talk about some feel-good stories for a change, and then even with the Alvin Kamara thing, just celebrating it being over, right? Just celebrating it being over. I appreciate y'all as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day, to all you everydayers out there. And of course, I thank you very much for making me a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, say hi. It was great to meet some of y'all at camp here today, including you, Melly Mel. Appreciate you very much for saying hi. But as always, do say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on whatever social media you're using on the Elon, at Ross Jackson, Nola, Nola. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.